Good morning.
Morning, guys. Welcome to the Unrivaled Potential Podcast. I'm your host, Mike Pomeroy, here with Ryan McKee. Go ahead and check us out on Pandora, Apple, Spotify, pretty much every place that you find podcasts,
And the YouTube.
then the YouTube, for the video content of it.
That's right. If you want to see our handsome faces.
We're all professional here today for the first time with our new mics, and looking forward to the studio really taking off.
Yeah,
So-
absolutely. I'm Ryan. Welcome. We're going to try to share some stories and talk about some things that will help you grow as a man and as a business owner. So let's dive right in.
Yeah, where did we ended last week, Ryan, talking about
We were talking about sales.
sales and the importance of it, and really being. Well, we got to the point where it's really all about you, right? They're buying a good product sometimes, but we know people that have bought crap that they don't need from people that they really like.
Happens every day.
Yeah,
People
Yeah.
buy stuff for me all the time.
yeah, I don't know.
Yeah, people are they're buying you. They're buying an idea. They're buying something that makes them feel comfortable. So as a home services business, you are absolutely in the business of making people comfortable in their homes. Auto mechanics are selling, the peace of mind on your car is going to get up and down the road, things like that. And ultimately, you have to start with that trust and likability factor. So towards the end of that conversation, we started saying, all right, how do we take our plumbers and our salespeople and our assistants and even our CSR type phone answering, appointment scheduling personnel, and make them better salespeople and more likable?
Yeah, yeah. Not only on the phone when they call in for an appointment, but out in the field, right? So yeah,
Absolutely. You want somebody who walks in the door and the customer is comfortable, happy to see them, and basically
Mike's
like they
getting
just
my-
like they just met a new friend.
yeah. Your mic's working. I was just checking mine, making sure it was going on.
Oh,
Yeah,
Mike.
yeah. Making a new friend, right?
Mike
That's
doesn't need a mic. He's a
they.
big,
Yeah,
big, loud plumber.
that's always
I'm not yelling. I'm just a plumber.
yeah. That's right. That's how we talk.
Yeah. So
I wish more people understood that. Yeah.
but yeah, and sometimes you hire somebody and they just have it. They've just got the gift, whether it's natural, they're just, their personality is very gregarious and likable, or they've developed it over years. It's really good to hire that person because you can train them plumbing, you can train them, the BCI system, things like that. I could train them how to do social and SEO and things like that. It's really tough to train somebody to be friendly. But
Yeah.
if you have somebody who's a really good technician and you just want them to be a little more friendly, let's talk about some ways to work on that.
Yeah. Well, especially in the contracting world, for the most part, they haven't had to be friendly,
Yeah.
and it's certainly not taught from the generation that taught me.
The
Right?
bigger jerk you are, the more money you make, right?
Well, you're leading a crew of really gruff guys. It's most of it, right? Service industry is it's a very niche market of. There are service plumbers out there, but a lot of them really do. I would say there's probably 30% plumbers in the service industry,
Hmm.
and in HVAC, right? The rest of it's all mostly new construction of who you're going to be around because they can hire more people, right? So for some of the crews that we get around and work, they've got 15 to 20 plumbers,
Hmm.
or maybe they're not even licensed, but they know what they're doing, right? For the installation of it, compared to, was there like 5 or 6 service plumbing companies in town that really have more than one person, and they're crews of 4 to 5 guys. So as you go see these larger companies, they've got 15 to 20 plumbers. They're all new construction guys, and so you have to learn. It's not necessarily putting up a wall. You just got to learn how to talk to those guys because you got a high turnover rate, and you're like, you got to go do this, and this. You don't have to be friendly per se, right? They're not going to quit because they need the job. There's no incentive to grow, no incentive to change. So you don't have to change anything about your personality. And that's a hard part in personal growth. It's like going to AA, right? It's you look at yourself and you go, you know, I'm an asshole. How do I change that? Or hey, my tone's off a little bit. And then you get good people around you, right? The book's not out here, but the power of the other, of just understanding who you can bring around you.
Hmm.
And I have been blessed with people that just love to criticize me. So it's been really great constructive criticism in the sense of like, your tone was off just a little bit there, and
I was gonna say I was feeling a little attacked there, but you weren't even talking about me.
not in that situation. But how many times, how many times now in our friendship is it? And it's hard for a man, right? It takes intentionality, even in our friendship, to bring you into my life and you bringing me into yours, to be able to say, hey, I think you should work on that. And then, I mean, look who we've become, and
I know we got it all figured out. Just keep listening, guys.
Yeah.
You'll get there too.
But yeah, you have to admit it to yourself, like, hey, it's the ultimate ownership.
Mm.
And I was talking to, I was thinking it was last Friday morning, with the guys, and we were talking about options and stuff like that. And while I don't know whether there was anything I could do in that situation, like honestly, I don't know either. If there was three options that you could have found, if sometimes the customer's in a rush, they don't want you to see their whole house, and so you're trying to control the situation while getting them options and moving along to make sure you keep up with your calls, right? And you can't, if you come back with the mindset there was nothing else I could do, then nothing will change. The possibility or the potential to change comes from going, there was something else I could do, but I missed it. And that's how we have to live our lives. Doesn't mean feeling guilty or shameful about something. It's just nothing will ever change if you say I'm good enough.
Right.
And same thing in relationships and some of the stuff that I've gone through. No, not necessarily everything's my fault. But if I don't sit there and go, there's something I could have done better in that situation, then you lose, well, not only you lose complete control of it, which isn't a bad thing, but then you'll never look for an opportunity to make something different if that scenario happens again.
Yeah. That book, Good to Great. I think it was Good to Great. The guy points out that the first step to getting better is recognizing that there's opportunity there. Because if you think, oh nope, I'm God made me perfect just the way I am.
Yeah, and we all have those moments.
And there's no improvement. Yeah, right.
I mean, I was just standing in the mirror this morning in the bathroom brushing my teeth, going, "You're welcome, world." It's just like
I wake up in the morning.
Yeah.
And I get better looking each day. Yeah, but everybody knows that person who thinks that they're God's gift. They think that they cannot improve on anything, and that everybody else should just mold around them. And their favorite phrase is, "Well, that's just who I am." And I think that's one of the biggest things that I would coach guys if I was leading men in a work situation. I would coach them to remove that phrase from their vocabulary.
Oh yeah,
That's
for
just
sure.
who I am. No, you've chosen these things that have made you that person, and you can choose other things.
And most of the
get
time
to
for
work.
men, that's a wall.
Oh yeah.
Have you discovered that? Yeah.
Yeah.
That's not only in your own
Who
life.
the hell are
but-
you to tell me that?
Yeah. We put up a wall that says, no, this is how I'm defined, and you can't ruin that definition because it's an insecurity that we haven't dealt with. Of like, no, this is, I'm a loud person. Now there's certain things in my in my voice, that there's a level of proudness that comes with that, right? Also being a bigger person, I feel like that came with the territory.
For those of you guys who don't know, Mike's a big person in every sense of the word. Personality, he's 6'4", and he's just a lot of person. He's a lot.
Yeah, and I never controlled that until I realized that it started affecting me in certain ways, and as I got around more and more people, It
Mhm.
didn't affect my day to day. And so I went 15, 20 years of just being a loud, big person. And then somebody was like,
Bull in a china shop.
yeah, well, exactly. I was called that so often as a kid. And my early working years, it was the same thing. Like, you don't know how to be gentle. You don't know how to, and you don't know how to, be softer in these moments and do things with finesse. And I defined myself as that in a negative sense, even though
And
I
as
was highly
and in a
successful.
positive sense too, right?
Well, it can be a positive thing.
Mhm.
And
You thought, I'm a big tough guy.
yeah, yeah.
Hey guys, I'm a big guy.
And so learning how to be gentle and then having 4 daughters
Mm.
was not something like, oh yeah, that'll be fine. And then you needed that
Oh,
softer side that I'm having to learn now, and the people that I work around, and some of our CSR team, and the
yeah.
administrators and
It
stuff.
is a little different working with plumbers and receptionists who you, they don't take the fat jokes quite as well as the plumbers do.
Yeah, well, yeah, especially on the humor side, yeah. But even I've had guys tell me that when I answer the phone, I sounded a little gruff. And they overthink it, and a couple of guys have overthought it. Like, well, why don't you just say something? Well, I just kind of figured that's how you answered
Why
the
are you
phone.
mad at me, Mike?
Yeah, and well, they never they just kind of let it be. I'm like, no, just say that. And now I've learned to change it,
Yeah,
and I had to change that with women, and my wife, when I was talking on the phone to her years ago, I had to learn how to. And the marriage books will tell you that too.
put on the sales voice. Hey, honey, how you
Yeah,
doing?
exactly. Always sound excited to hear, because then they just overthinking it. And I've had to do it with some of the guys that are by definition grumpy, as how they've defined themselves. And I just have to change my tone, because then you're leading the way.
Absolutely. So, what was it that made you change? Deep thoughts.
Yeah,
You can see the
deleting
wheels
that
turning.
definition in myself
Mm,
of being stuck in a box. That this is all I'm good at, right? Is being loud
right.
and taking over a room. Spent a lot of years barreling over people without realizing, having, there was a lack of empathy for many years that came in that territory of I'm good enough, and it was an insecurity that I just had to deal with. And so the change in myself was, how how am I going to lead people if I can't ever change myself?
Yeah. So, what did it though? Why?
It was the communication. The point that I was trying to get across many times was not heard
Mm.
because of my voice, right?
So you got
So
frustrated.
it was frustration in myself of like, okay, I'm trying to communicate this, but I'm saying it too loudly. And also, let's say I learned the same thing with my size with customers, right? You get a little old lady that's 5 foot tall, and sometimes those women have been through, and which is that's a huge, in the plumbing heating industry, that is a big target, right? The men are at work,
Oh,
it's the wife that's home, and you come in and they've been through, or they're not married and they're divorced, and single mom or something like that, and they've been through maybe not necessarily an abusive situation, but something similar, and you have to change your
all of a sudden
body.
you're just some big scary man.
Exactly. And you don't know, like dogs will do the same thing, right? If
Mm.
they've been beaten by a larger man. I don't normally have animals that don't like me, but I've seen some animals that people have gotten from the pound that I couldn't make like me based off of my size. And so you always have to sit down on the floor or something like that so you don't get bit, right? Because that's a big part of the job. And so I noticed it many years ago with customers,
Hmm.
and then it took me several years after that to notice it, that I should do it not only in my own family, but then also with other people in the workplace. It's not a it's not a bad thing for a person to feel like that. But there's some guys that was even necessary with too.
Yeah.
You don't slouch down and treat them.
Guy with a little man syndrome, or somebody whose dad was too domineering or something.
Yeah, too domineering. So it brings out a more of a feministic type nature usually in men.
Hmm.
But the uh,
So that's really interesting. It was the money, work basically motivated you to do it early on with your professional life, but it took years later to figure out, oh, I should do this in my private life, which is ultimately, the more important thing, because
oh,
we
right,
can always go
yeah.
make more money. We can't. It's pretty tough to go make another family, especially keeping the existing one. And I think I know I've done the same thing. I for years treated my customers better than I treated my own wife, and she would even tell me like, "Hey, do you talk to your customers like this?" I was like, "Ouch, no." What? Who are you to
Yeah,
speak truth to me?
yeah.
Um, but that I think a lot of us do that, where it's just the money gets our attention first. So I guess as we're leading men, if we can use that as a tool to help them realize, oh, I'll make more money if I work on these things. If I start reading good books and listening to good podcasts and actually doing some self introspection and trying to improve myself, not just being happy with, oh, that's just who I am. So that kind of helps me as I go out into a growing business that's going to be hiring and putting these people through all kinds of onboarding and stuff like that. I'm going to keep that in mind as I try to motivate them to self improvement and professional development.
Yeah.
We all knew that, but we all know money's a great motivator, but to see it as a motivator to not only, hey, do better at your job, but hey, be a better person and you're going to make a lot more money.
Well, and it's hitting, especially in this service world, right? You meet such a variety of different people from so many different backgrounds. The goal is how many people from different cultures, different demographics, life choices, whatever. How many people can I make a difference? And not only on the spiritual side of things too, right?
Yeah.
I mean, we're always trying to show Christ's love and get that out there. And so on that aspect, how many people can you reach? It's no different than changing facial hair, how you look,
Mm.
right? Showing up in someone's house. I mean, they say you got 7 seconds walking up to someone's house to make the first impression. So first impression is everything of how that person is either going to receive you into their home, receive you in general, listen to what you're saying. And if you can't create that type of environment to where they go, oh yeah, I really enjoyed that conversation. I can actually think about what they say, not how many times have we done this, walk away from a conversation going, what an idiot, you know. And
I don't know, Mike. I've
yeah,
never thought
yeah,
that.
right.
Definitely
Yeah.
not.
And some of it may be because they
How judgmental are
maybe it's because they
you?
talk too much, or maybe it's because they had because they look stupid. You know, if I'm sitting at a business meeting and a guy's got a mohawk, I'm sorry, I'm going to judge you, and I'm going to have a really hard time understanding, not understanding what you're saying, but actually taking what you're
Yeah.
saying and going, oh yeah, let's make a difference. Yeah,
We're not supposed to judge books by covers, but if you put a kindergarten drawing on the cover of your book, it makes it very difficult to take the literature seriously.
right.
So, first impressions are everything, right? So, work on yourself before you show up so that the things coming out of your mouth actually have a chance of falling on open ears.
Yeah, it's okay to be. I was talking, discussing this last week with a mentor, but it's okay to be proud of yourself.
Hmm.
And admitting that you need to change things is just part of life. It's nothing to do with you being proud of who you are, right?
Mm-hmm.
We've all had choices and mistakes that we've made, and looking at yourself going, yeah, I've been successful. I have changed from who I was. I'm no longer that old creature, and I've always got things that I'm working on.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. Well, and what I think a lot of people don't get is we're all changing. They say you're a whole new person every 7 years, just cellularly, like all the cells regenerate and stuff like that. So every 7 years, you're a whole new person anyway. The question is, are you getting better or worse? And if you think, well, no, I'm just staying the same, no, you're getting worse. We don't just magically get better. You have to put some effort into it.
Yeah. Yeah,
And
it goes back to the analogy of the plant, right? The plant's always growing. Flowers
mm,
are always growing. If they're not growing, they're dying.
Right.
And we can't. That's why we get stagnant seasons. We a lot of, even in our men's group, right? We
Mm.
hear that of like, I just feel stagnant. I feel like I'm not going anywhere. Sometimes that's based off of. That's why the daily habits are so important. I'm going somewhere. I want to see some growth in this. It may take a year for all of these things to join together, and then you see the results of it.
Yeah.
But it could be from one new conversation with someone that you would normally look at and go, I don't know. I'm like, I used to have those moments like, I got nothing to talk about with that person. I'm not even going to waste my energy. And usually it's in the form of somebody with a large amount of bumper stickers driving down the road. And I am still guilty of that. Like, I really hope they don't park next to me at Walmart because I don't even want to say good morning. And I've had those moments because I'm waiting for the stereotype to walk out of the car, and they're either going to do one of two things: shout something. Well, I don't even know. It's not important to get on here. Something political on one side of the spectrum or the other, right? Based off
So
of
you,
me
so you don't
saying
all
good morning.
you also don't park next to the guy who's got the, I don't believe the liberal media InfoWars and stuff like that on his
Yeah,
on his
if
truck
somebody's got a flag on the back of their truck,
of any kind.
of any kind, I will avoid them like the plague. Yeah, I have in the past. I've had those moments. I've had those thoughts of like, oh my goodness me, I don't. Yeah, I know what they're listening to in that truck right now. I know, and we all know, and they're great people. And you got to be able to have conversations with these, and I've been able to now. But there was a level of the wrong side of pride years ago that went, that person's obnoxious.
So my pride shows itself in a different way. I want to talk to all these people because I really want to educate them.
Oh yeah,
That's how proud I am. I'm like, let me just get 5 minutes with this guy. I can change his mind. It never works.
yeah.
And no one ever want to talk to me. I don't know why. I just, I see somebody wearing a mask walking down the street. I just want to be like, hey, are you sick or are you worried about getting sick? You know those things don't work, right?
Yeah. Have you listened to Joe Rogan? Yeah.
Absolutely. On that note, we're gonna take a moment to refill our cup of pipe and torch coffee. Pipe and torch, the plumber's coffee.
So there's the level of personal growth. What I know as Christian men we can do is it turns into one of those things of you just got to let God change your heart. Now there's a lot of power that comes into that, but I'm more of there's practical ways that you can change habits. God has the ability to change everything, and
Yeah.
I don't deny that.
And he's the only one.
But
Everything else we're just
but there are things that you can, it goes back to the idea you can pray all you want, but sometimes you just got to step your foot out and and move forward, right? So just sitting there and doing nothing and praying about it, as that doesn't help anyone in the field. If we were to sit here today, it's like, yeah, if you just want to change your life around the day, just get in that truck, go out to the customer's job and pray on your way over there. Now that's a great thing,
Yep, definitely do that.
but not super practical for
Yeah.
what we do on a daily life, right? Those things, they all tie together with everything else. And so I did put some books out here, ones that have impacted me in, you've probably read all these ones too.
No,
Ryan.
actually, I was looking at them and I thought this is a totally different list than what I would have stacked up.
Oh, really?
And I shouldn't say totally different, but like I haven't read Simon Sinek's Leaders Eat Last. I've read him, but not this book, so that's a good one to put on my list. I have read Think and Grow Rich. Just got the one thing recommended to me last week, and I've never even heard of Listen Well. So this is a great example of there's 1,000 different ways to go about self improvement.
Well, Listen Well and Lead Better, I read about a year ago. That was right after I read that Simon Sinek, because I like listening to Simon Sinek talk. Not a huge fan of reading that book.
Simon Sinek.
Yeah, it was. Let's just say it was exhausting. It took me a long time to get through it. That would probably be a really good Audible book, was that Simon Sinek one. But there's a lot in there that I just had to digest certain things. and then turn some things to the side. Like, okay,
See,
you're
that's a sign of a great book to me when it takes you a minute to digest it. You don't just go, oh yeah,
well, there's a
that's
lot of
good.
stuff to digest, and it's a fantastic, of you if you're going to be a leader, you can't come in and be like, all right, guys, it's your fault or anything like that. There's no opportunity for that. You really do eat last in the fact that you're the last guy that gets paid. You're the last guy that leaves at the end of the night. No matter whether you own the company or you're managing a company, CEO, anything like that, right? If you're going to lead the group, you have to be willing to move forward first. So part of this personal growth is most people don't want to do that because it's out of their comfort zone. You have to be the one that's comfortable getting out of his comfort zone, trying something new, leading the way, teaching somebody else how to do it, and then hopefully you see results from it. But it's trial and error a lot of the time, right? It just goes back to a lot of hunter gatherer kind of crap, that bothers the crap out of me. Well, it's like, why is this in here? I'm trying to learn other things, and it's a lot of evolution and stuff like that
Hmm.
that bothers me while I'm trying to read it because I don't see it as, well, it's not what I don't agree with it anyway. But uh,
Yeah, I got you.
yeah,
Yeah, I read a really good book. I think it was the Rational Optimist. I don't know if you ever read that, but um, guy goes through all of human history and talks about why this is truly the greatest time that has ever been. 1955. If you had air conditioning and a refrigerator, you were part of the one percenters. Now everybody's got air conditioning and a refrigerator. Life has just continued to get better and better because of technology and all these things. But people keep saying, "Oh, it's getting worse and worse." So it was great perspective. But yeah, he goes back to he's like, "Oh yeah, a million years ago, and we were coming out of the sludge pool," and it's
yeah,
like, okay, all right, we'll just kind of skim over that part.
and that's something too. When you can write books and be highly successful, but it's no different than as you have to be careful where you are as a company on that spectrum of your target audience. How many
Mm,
people are you going to influence? Bands, a lot of bands do this, like Skillet, right?
yeah,
You
yeah,
listen to Skillet,
yep.
right? So I mean, most of their lyrics are not
Christian.
the Christian lyrics by definition, right?
Hmm.
It's not the same thing as listening to Michael W. Smith or the Gaithers, right? So it's a
Ooh,
two
that's one from the Wayback
that
Machine.
yeah, I mean different genres obviously, but you wouldn't notice it, and most guys don't. And I find that super funny of guys that are atheistic or agnostic and they love Skillet, and
You're
I'm
like,
like,
ha ha,
I wish
gotcha.
I wish they would just go to one of their concerts because I've been to their concerts. And me and my dad we used to argue about some of this stuff too and that music. And then I went to a Skillet concert, and they got to the end, and it was all like salvation, Christ based, and why. Like this is why we sing the way we do. This is why you're able to relate to our music, and because music is relatable, right?
Yeah,
You enjoy it. Not only is it just the beat, the rhythm, they're good music, but then the message that's there is deep. If they came right off the bat and started turning everything into, I would say, for this example, right? I was raised with Southern gospel music, which I enjoy listening to, but every single one of them is based off of
I was a sinner and now I'm saved.
exactly something like that, or it's a Bible story that they've turned into music, right? You're hitting by statistics, right? 40% of the population. Nobody else is going to listen to it, whether they
Mm.
like
Oh
that
yeah,
type of music at all,
half the
right?
I was amazed by this when I got married. My wife and her family, they didn't even realize that like Christian radio stations existed.
Yeah,
They they turned on whatever the local Christian radio station was, KJOL, Light Praise, uh, and they were like, what is this?
yeah.
They thought, is this some kind of like indoctrination program? And I was like, no, this is Christian radio. Anyway, go ahead.
Yeah, when I was raised with it, it's perfectly normal for me. But the reality is, most people aren't going to listen to it, whether they like the beat or not,
Right.
because they especially if they're not Christians, right?
Hmm.
They're just going to delete that part. So as a company,
I even know a bunch of Christians who don't like listening to Christian
well,
music.
exactly, yeah, and
It all sounds the same.
Yeah.
I don't know
Yeah.
why I'm doing this voice today. Just coming out a lot.
You can't, you lose half of your ability to reach that
Yeah.
people because they've already shut you off.
Yeah.
And the goal is to, even going back to Simon Sinek's book, is like, how many people are you going to be able to reach with this?
Mm-hmm.
If you get too far in your business of either politics, religion, or it's, for me, once again, professional businesses that, are called Three Crosses Plumbing or whatever, something spiritual related.
Yeah.
It drives me nuts.
JC Mechanical.
Yeah. There may be one of those. I don't know. But anyway,
they're car detailers, not mechanical.
Okay. and so that part, I don't enjoy it. It's really about, I'm not an overly spiritual person. You've gotten to know me well. I mean, I'll see curse like a sailor sometimes, and
curse like a sailor, pray like a saint, right?
That's right. Yeah. And but what you want to do is be able to bring in enough people into your life to where you can show the difference that has happened to you, of how God's come into your life and changed you. And you can't do that if you've already put those walls up by over expressing. We all know those people in our lives, or sharing one opinion and there's no change from that. Now, it's okay to have opinions and stand on what you believe and what's right. But it's building that relationship with the customer or your employees first, or people that you're reaching. Like, hey, I want you to understand who I am, and then, oh yeah, I really respect that person. I didn't necessarily agree with what they said on this regard, but I could definitely see where they're coming from. You know?
Yeah. For years, I've built really good relationships with people because I focused on their business first, helped them grow there, and then as we became friends, then inviting them to a men's Bible study or something like that. It's just not weird or anything. It's like, oh yeah, we see each other weekly.
Yeah,
anyway.
If you enjoy this relationship right here, I bet you'll really enjoy this.
Yeah.
And then they can go, oh yeah, I actually do really enjoy this relationship here. I'd love to have more of them.
Right. Yeah, and that's exactly Skillet, or business, or the business world ministry. That's how a lot of people who are never gonna set foot in a church get evangelized, I guess you could say, for lack of a better word. And in your business, if you're not a Christian but you're focused on building better employees, don't come out and be like, all right, you need to read this book because that's what's going to do it. Build a relationship with them and help them see how they're going to grow, they're going to benefit, they're going to make more money. If they just say, okay, I'm not perfect, I'm not God's gift to plumbing or electrical or landscaping, maybe I could do a little bit better. If they can at least open up that maybe I could do a little better, all of a sudden they can change themselves and they can change their whole world, make a lot of more money, and make a lot happier customers and families.
Yeah. So we're talking about these books, Ryan, and a lot of men that are listening, right? But by definition, there's a large group of men out there that have a hard time slowing down enough to read a book.
Yeah, absolutely.
Now for me personally, to sit and really enjoy reading a book, like I tell a lot of people this, I normally have to have music playing. And my best reading is if I'm sitting in a rocking chair or something like that. So if I'm sitting in a rocking chair, I got some music playing. I used to have one of those.
Got your knitting on your lap?
Yeah, my knitting on my lap, so I could do it with one hand while reading the other. And that's how I read books, and I really enjoy it. But to do it in a silent room is very difficult for me. And so I've discovered that, and I know a lot of men, some really close men in my life that they can't read at all. Right. Some of it's because they're working too much, and so they do audible books. And so there's always options out there. And then some people, I know a couple of guys that when they're listening to audiobooks or podcasts, they have to listen to it on 1.75 or 1.5 speed. So there's options out there, and there really is no excuse of I just can't concentrate.
It's 2025.
I've got ADHD, I've got anxiety. Or
look at our podcast. If you're not on Spotify, Pandora, Apple, well, okay, then everybody's got access to YouTube. Like there's no excuse. You should be subscribing and liking us on every platform.
Absolutely. Yeah.
That's true.
there's no excuse for not being able to find this information. Well, I just don't read books. Like, well, that's once again, that goes back to that definition of yourself of I just don't read books. Quit telling yourself that.
Yeah.
Because I loved reading books, and then I went several years without slowing down long enough to read a book because I had everything else going on in my mind. Then I just had to bring back the habit.
Yeah.
And then you just do
Yeah.
that time blocking. The one thing right here is I had to start probably 6 years ago, time blocking 15 minutes every morning. And then I started time blocking 15 minutes every night. And then it would normally turn into 30 minutes, right? Usually.
Yeah, you get into a good book. It is amazing. People who don't read and all of a sudden they find something they like to read, and before you know it, you can't stop them.
Yeah.
It is addictive because there's just so much enjoyment in it, and God created us to like those things and to enjoy learning and creating.
So if you're not into reading books now, it's a huge part of personal growth. Everyone will tell you that because you're stuck in your own head and there's no other perspectives. Especially as men, we really get into this of like what's got to be this way and here's why. And the reasoning may not be wrong, but the more perspectives that you start to see, which is why journaling is so important as well as for me, and I'll share that. And when I journal, I've thought the process. Now I write it down. While I'm writing it down, I actually see another perspective.
Yeah.
And I'm processing through it, and I go, oh yeah, it's a different way of looking at it. It's been really helpful.
It's like having a therapist.
Yeah.
Because a lot of people, they just need to talk it out. The therapist could say nothing, but if they just talk it out and maybe give a little, have you thought about every once in a while? You've got your own free therapist right there. You're just writing it every day.
Yeah.
Which, for those of you who don't know Mike, it's a good thing he does.
Oh, for sure. Yeah.
All right, Mike, what are we going to talk about
So
next
I would
week?
say if you're going to get into reading a book, the one thing is the one that's
Great place to
especially
start.
right now if you're really busy, right? You're busy with kids, you're busy with life, you're starting your own company, or you're just working for someone and you're incredibly busy, 10 to 12 hours a day. You still need to learn how to make time intentional, right? So if you're doing 12-hour days and you're exhausted when you come home or you're up early, well, then make some time. So the one thing is really powerful in the sense of you just need to know what's important. So if you're listening to this and you're going, hey, I need to
That sounds great. I don't have time for it.
I need to start growing. Yeah. Then that's the place where you need to learn how to tell people no and go, yeah, I'm actually.
And you don't have time not to start growing.
Yeah, right. Because we always have the excuses, right? I didn't for years. Now I'm busier than I've ever been, but I've got time for what could be considered some really useless crap. Of like, wow, I don't have time for reading books. If I can make time for reading books, then a lot of other people should be, right?
Yeah.
Because I could be doing paperwork right now, and making money.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, sending out invoices. I've got 5 kids, 2 businesses, and a nonprofit, and we could definitely make excuses as to why we can't do those things. So, just don't make any excuses. I was gonna ask you a question about something. We'll have to talk about it next week, I guess.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
Oh, I know what I was gonna say. So your recommendation would be the one thing. Mine's The 7 Habits. I recommend that book to everybody I talk to because
I have that one on there. I thought about bringing it out, but that's a good one.
And it's good for everybody. Business owners, employees, men, women, kids. It's just so foundational, and it's one of those things where it was written 30 or something years ago, but the principles don't change. So just starting to build up principles and be humble enough to say, am I putting first things first? Well, same thing, just like time blocking. Am I prioritizing the one big thing? First things first. All right, wonderful. I think we've run over time this morning, but what are we talking about next week? I always put Mike on the spot. I never warn him. I just do it.
So we dove in some personal growth of steps that we take. I guess we should probably take that 7 Habits book and just break down
Ooh, that sounds
the
good.
first 3 options in there, the first 3 rules basically of of what does this look like to continue forward. So people that haven't created this habit, I had people that came into my life. Some of it was, through a multi-level
Oh yeah.
group that was really promotional in that kind of material.
Yeah, the book of the week. Got to be
Yeah,
on the book of the week club,
and so
or book of the month, tape of the week.
the what does that look like of how to take it, one thing. Don't make it overcomplicated. What a lot of us do, and I did for a long time, was, okay, here's 28 things that I'm going to change tomorrow.
Yeah, that annual process of New Year's resolutions.
Yeah.
I'm gonna get up early. I'm gonna go to the gym every day. I'm gonna read good
Oh
books.
yeah, and you just
I'm
exhaust
gonna be
yourself.
on time.
Yeah, two weeks goes by and you're done. And
And you're depressed. You're
yeah,
like, man, I'm such a failure.
yeah,
Instead of going, okay, I'm gonna work on this one thing for a while,
yeah,
make a habit out of it, and then I'll think about some other stuff.
yeah, and then bring on the next one. And it's really just that we get so used to instant gratification, and dealing with the delayed gratification of what does this look like. It's good to have goals and intentions. You don't have to look 30 years in advance, right? But it's okay to have a year goal, a 3-month goal, and it talks about that in the one thing too, setting up a 1 week goal, 2 week goal, 1 month, 3 months, 6 months, 9 months, 12, and then 5 years. And I have all of those wrote out to where I'm going to be. And you just deal with them. They're in different lists, right? So I know that the stuff I'm working on for my week goal is going to help me with my 5-year goal.
Yeah,
And
that's
so I
really
don't have to constantly be looking at the 5-year goal, because I already know that these ones are pushing me that direction. And you have to pick up. When I started getting into taking care of myself in a healthful way, I couldn't do, like, okay, I got to eat better in the morning. I got to wake up and do this. I got to do, the daily habits. I did one thing for 3 or 4 weeks, which was just make sure the alarm's going off. I'm not hitting snooze, right? It's 5 o'clock every day, no matter what.
Eat on the floor.
Exactly. And then if you do that, then you feel successful and you're like, yeah, I've got this habit fixed. Now I'm going to add something else into that morning.
It's like we were talking about earlier. When you were a younger man, you took pride in being early to everything. There's it can border on unhealthy pride, but there's a healthy sense of pride in just, yeah, I woke up at 5 o'clock this morning. I've gotten more done, this morning already than half the people in the world.
Yeah.
There's something to be said for that. Build some confidence and start working on the next thing.
Yeah, it's little pieces of accomplishment
Absolutely.
that keep you pushing forward, right? If you have an exhausting day, sometimes you're down on yourself. And that's why, and I was joking with somebody yesterday in the office, like, I wake up 20 minutes before I come to work. Like, I couldn't do that anymore. I've had those days, right? And that was normally, I was backlogging or just waking up late. And
All right, folks. Like, share, subscribe, and join us again next week on the Unrivaled Potential podcast, where we'll take 7 habits and take it to the next level.
okay. Yeah.
For
See you
Mike
guys soon.
Pomeroy, I'm Ryan McKee. We'll see you soon.